So another U.S. bank has just went under. However, in this case, it's because of false and deceptive records. That right there is the key, and that, according to experts, is what is potentially coming to several more banks across the United States. So today, I'm going to break down what just happened this past week and why we should all be watching this and somewhat concerned moving forward. So, break all this down in just a moment, but all I ask is one thing. Takes 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoy these daily updates. And now, let's begin. So here's the concerning part. What normally happens when FDIC takes over a bank is that they wait until the bank closes for that week. So normally banks are struggling or they go under, usually Friday at the close of business. That's exactly what happened here. Look at this. It says Oklahoma bank fails amid claims of false and deceptive bank records. This is just from Friday. Now, I want to read a little bit of what's going on here because, again, this right here is troubling. Look at this. It says First National Bank of Lindsay closes. FDIC takes over deposits. It says Friday, the First National Bank of Lindsay was closed by the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, or the OCC, with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation appointed as receiver. Now, I want to read this, and the reason why is because we are about to see more and more banks fail. That is what we know. This article back in May says why hundreds of U.S. banks may be at risk of failure. Well, there's multiple reasons why. Some of which have to do with commercial real estate and the mortgages that they are currently under, but they need to actually refinance in the next handful of months. We know about $1.5 trillion needs to be refinanced, but the problem there is businesses don't want to refinance these loans because they don't want the buildings, which means they're going to give the buildings back to the banks, and the banks aren't in the business of holding real estate. Banks want your money. They want payments. That's what they want. So that's one of the reasons why hundreds of banks are at the risk of failure. And others, it's a liquidity issue. Now, I want to read this right here. It says Friday, the First National Bank of Lindsay was closed by the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation appointed as a receiver. It says the OCC acted after identifying false and deceptive bank records and other information suggesting fraud that revealed depletion of the bank's capital. The OCC also found that the bank was in an unsafe or unsound condition to transact business, and that the bank's assets were less than its obligations to its creditors and others. That is a key. When your bank's assets are less than your obligations. And again, I bring this up because according to reports back in, I believe, June or July of this summer of 2024, they were reporting that more than 1,000 banks should go under because their assets are less than their obligations. Now, here's the other thing. When your assets and your debts don't align and your debts are not being paid, that bank is on the hook for all that money. The bank, again, is not in the business of holding real estate. Doesn't care about appreciation of real estate. What they care about is you keep making the payments as a business. But if you're not doing that, that's where the bank really struggles. Let's keep reading this. It says the OCC is referring the matter to the United States Department of Justice, which has a wide variety of tools to hold individuals accountable for criminal acts and focuses on victims in all of its matters. It says to protect depositors, the FDIC has entered into a purchase and assumption agreement with First Bank and Trust Company based in Duncan, Oklahoma. It says which will assume the insured deposits of the failed bank. The sole office of the First National Bank of Lindsay will reopen as a branch of First Bank and Trust Company during its normal business hours on Monday, October 21st. Okay. It says over the weekend, customers will still have access to their insured deposits via checks, ATMs, or debit cards, and checks drawn on the bank will continue to be processed. Loan customers should continue making payments as usual. Now, I want to read you a little bit of the numbers here in just a second. But before I do that, I just want to warn you that this will not be the only bank that goes under, anytime soon. There will be multiple banks that go under here in the next 6 months. Some are expecting we're going to see more banks go under to start 2025 than in history. That could be true. I don't know for sure, but here's what I do know. I've talked to many managers at banks, many tellers. I have a couple friends that are, they're kind of like a regional manager, but it's, again, smaller banks. Now, and I bring this up because every single one of them is saying the same thing. The banking industry is changing. They don't need as many tellers. They don't need as many people working inside of the banks. Artificial intelligence is taking over. You don't even have to go into the actual bank to deposit a check, to cash a check, to take out money, to do certain transactions. You can do it all through an ATM machine. You can do it all through your phone, through an app. That's what's crazy. And so right now, banks are warning that, yes, there's going to be massive changes here very soon. But if banks start warning customers that, well, we're having some issues because we don't have enough money, that becomes a problem. Now, I want to read this to you. It says, as of June 30th, 2024, the First National Bank of Lindsay reported total assets of $107.8 million and total deposits of $97.5 million. About $7.1 million of the deposits exceeded FDIC insurance limits, though this figure may change as the FDIC gathers more information from customers. Okay, so they had total assets of $107 million. They had total deposits of $97.5 million, but only $7.1 million of that is not covered by FDIC insurance. Now, I want you to keep this in mind. Currently, there is like $19 trillion deposited from in U.S. financial institutions. $19 trillion of total deposits. Okay? We have about $122 billion in the FDIC insurance fund, meaning less than 1% of all the deposits in the United States are actually insured. Because where else are they going to get the money? You think the U.S. government's just going to throw out $1 trillion in additional debt to cover these banks? No. So the government isn't going to bail out banks. There won't be a bailout. According to reports, what's going to happen is there will be a bail-in. And in the forms that you filled out when you opened up your bank account, the thing that you signed, there was something that said in the event of potentially liquidity issues or any issue from the bank, they could actually take your deposits and they could pay their debts. They could use your money to pay themselves. That's what a bank bail-in is. They're bailing themselves in using their customers' money. So, just be prepared. This could happen here in the very near future. So, just understand, as we see all this stuff going on, it could happen to you very soon. I have a friend that this is his bank. This is where he used to bank. And he was extremely concerned and asked so many questions about it. But here's what I can tell you. For most banks, you're perfectly fine. Your money's still going to be there. It's not going anywhere, right? You will be perfectly safe. But as I tell every single person, I've told you guys many times before, do not keep your money all in one bank. Spread it out, diversify. Put it in some large banks, a couple regional banks, maybe some credit unions, and you should be perfectly fine. So, I will leave you with that, but that is what we know as of today. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.